Hey, what's up followers? Dave here from CNC3D. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the latest release of our CNC3D Commander software. Today is the 31st of March, 2025, and we have just launched our versions. So we're going to the About box here. We have just launched build 305 of our CNC3D Commander software a couple of days earlier. So we thought we would put a video together about all of the features of CNC3D Commander. I'm going to try to be as concise as I possibly can be in this video, so we can try to cover as much as we can without this being a 5-hour video. So let's just jump straight in. Now, for those of you who have just updated Commander to 305 and you have a Nighthawk controller, you have a new firmware update pending and a web interface update pending as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit connect on here. Now, the first thing it's asking is, do you want to update your firmware? So yes, we do. So basically, there's a whole bunch of new features that have been put into CNC3D Commander that actually require a firmware update on the Nighthawk to work. So we'll just go ahead and basically what will happen when you have a firmware update, it'll prompt you, you say yes, and then all you need to do is just hit start, and then this will actually go through and apply the firmware update. Now, it is a little bit slow at the moment. The 2.3 firmware for trafficking data over Wi-Fi was actually very slow. The new version of 2.4 is around 4 to 5 times faster, so about 400 to 500% better. So that should be a huge improvement for a lot of you that are uploading large files to your Nighthawk that used to take about 5 minutes. They now take about 1. So it's definitely a lot faster in general. We have noticed some job files. I uploaded a 30 megabyte job the other day. It used to take roughly about maybe 10 or 12 minutes to do. It took 1 minute and 40 seconds. So it was substantially quicker. So I'm basically just waiting for this to complete now, and then we can jump straight back into it. All right, so that has now completed successfully. Let's just hit close. Now, if we reconnect back to our controller, and you can see a web portal update is available for your Nighthawk CNC. So from 1.40 to 1.50. So let's say yes to this. Now, already this should be much faster because the firmware has been updated to 2.4. So we'll just click on start. And that is done. And so that is basically how firmware updates and web interface updates work for the Nighthawk. Is we'll just prompt you within Commander. So there'll be an update for Commander, and there might be a firmware update for the Nighthawk. And it's a very easy process rather than certain other controllers where you need to go and find the right tool to upload the firmware. You need to go and find the right firmware. This is just an automated process. So you guys can just spend more time using your CNCs and not trying to figure out the computer tricks behind how to get it all to work. So let's go ahead and connect now. And you can see that we are now just connected and there's no further prompts. So first thing to do, obviously with a Nighthawk, whenever you first power it on or it resets like we have by doing firmware, it always starts up in an alarm mode. We can just hit the unlock button down here. Now, I will be doing a full run through on Commander, not just the 305 changes, but a general video on this. So the way it's essentially laid out, you have your connection options at the top left here, and you can choose between IP or COM port if you're connected via USB or via Bluetooth. And then, of course, across the top, you've got this My Tools button, which is essentially a list of tools. Now, we have our CNC3D Turbo Cut end mill range in here by default, and you can essentially update these values to whatever you would like when you go in here. So you obviously can't change the name because this particular profile is actually a factory profile, so it's one that has been pushed by us. But you can choose to make your own toolbox in here, call it whatever you would like, and load your own tool information in there whenever you are ready to do that. But basically, you can pretty much just go through and use the default settings here if you are using our end mills, and you'll notice the entire end mill range is in here as well, including our Pro ones as well too. So if you want a handy reference for feeds and speeds, this is a very easy place for you to find it. So we'll close out of there. Now, obviously, you have the Create box here. This will open up the creation tools within CNC3D Commander. So a lot of people have never actually ventured into this section, but there are some tools in here, and we will get to these very shortly. We're just going through the top buttons at the moment. Now, obviously, the next option you have across the top here is the settings menu, which you cannot actually access while you are connected. Jump on, and then, of course, you have the link to the About box here. And then, of course, you have your help menu here, which has a whole bunch of new stuff in here. So there's handy support tools. Now, it is important to actually go through some of these. We might do that right now. So obviously, raw data window is a raw data window. It is a window that is designed to show you data going to your controller and coming back that you can choose to view at any time if you're trying to troubleshoot something, or if you need to provide information to our support team or to the community to try to get help. Having actual data is really helpful. So having this window open in the background while you're doing whatever it is you're doing that created a problem is probably a good idea to do. We'll close out of that. We'll go back into help. Obviously, some other handy tools. Set $10 = 3. You can choose to view the COM error log. Now, for this particular one, there's obviously no COM issues. You can obviously read what they mean on the side here. We do have our CNC3D ESP32 firmware tool, which is a very handy tool for you to be able to program firmware like on your X Pro V5. For those of you that have an X Pro V5 and look for a handy tool, this will work on Wi-Fi or it will work via USB. It just won't do firmware updates on Bluetooth. So just to be aware of that. Now let's move in. Obviously, you have user guides. So for those of you with a CNC3D machine or controller, your manuals for all of your machines are here on the left-hand side. And your CNC3D controllers, you have the Nighthawk manual here and the Nighthawk scribe manual. Now, if we go into support topics, so this is a new feature that has been added into Build 305. So there's very common questions. So we have actually made a support FAQ page or a support, I guess you could say, forum that specifically addresses certain things. So for example, where can I find post processors for Nighthawk and other GRBL controllers? If you double click on one of these, what it will do is it'll basically launch your web browser and take you through to our post processor page. So you can actually go ahead and download whatever post processor it is that you actually want to actually use. So it's a handy little feature there. So we'll close out of that. Now, obviously, where can I find installable tool libraries? Again, this will take you into our CNC3D.com.au website where you can download our tool libraries. Alternatively, of course, you can always just click on the My Tools button at the top here, and that will bring up a menu for you as well. So a lot of these will answer a lot of common questions. There's a reason why we have made articles on these. So if you have any issues with your CNC that relate to these, just try double clicking on it. And you'll probably find that there is an article that we have written which will actually help you resolve that problem. So there you go. You can pretty much go through those. Now there's basic diagnostics, which will actually tell you what the initial connection data is and stuff like that. So this can be handy when trying to get the community to help you out, or if you reach out to us for support, we may ask for this information. Now you can see there's a copy all button there that will copy all of this text into your clipboard automatically. So you can essentially paste that to us in an email. Now for basic support. So for those of you that do not have a CNC3D machine or controller and you want to reach out to our community, this is a really good way to do it. This button at the bottom down here is essentially shows you how to best use the raw data window that we had back in support tools here in order to be able to get the best support. Now, the priority support tab has changed, or this is a new tab. So what we are offering is a premium support option for those of you that do not have a CNC3D machine or controller and basically want to have our engineering team, which are highly skilled at working with CNC routers, to essentially assist you. So the requirement for that is you have to be a CNC3D Commander user. You can have an X Pro V5. Our team are happy to help with a lot of those to the best of our ability. It is not a product that we manufacture, but is a product that we understand quite well because it is similar to the Nighthawk, or it was originally, until we've added a whole bunch of new stuff into the Nighthawk and really developed it way beyond what any other project is currently at right now. That's been our objective. It's been a huge focus of mine. So for those of you who are looking for priority support, we do actually offer priority support credits in the form of minutes that you can use, where we will remote in with you and be on the phone with you and try to help you through things. Now, this doesn't just need to be for problem troubleshooting. this could be just for getting used to your machine and is probably worth it. Now, there's a couple of links here that you can click on, and basically you can choose to purchase minutes here, and then you can contact us to arrange a time for us to actually do this premium support option. So that's basically your entire help menu. So there's a lot of handy stuff in there, especially in support topics. There's obviously your manuals for your machines and your controllers. You've got your basic support links here. You've got your priority support for those of you who want that, or who have a CNC3D machine or controller. We're more than happy to help in and try to work you through it. So that's essentially the help menu within Commander. Now let's move on to the main Commander window. So on the left-hand side here, you obviously have your axes, you have your current machine position, you have your current job position, which most CNC controllers actually have. Now, specific to the Nighthawk is these values down the bottom here, like for example, the G90 or the G91. The Nighthawk will actually report this information. So other controllers do not do this. So a few people have assumed that this is some sort of a paid feature. It's actually not the case. Just we are the only ones who are passing this information back on the Nighthawk. No one else in GRBL-based controllers is doing this. Like again, with the O option, which is your offset option, so we know we're in G54. We've just chosen to do this, so the G90, G91, and G54 through to G59. We've just chosen to do this to make it easier for our users to know what they are currently doing, and that's why these features are here. So that's your basic options. Now, you've got some handy functions under here. So obviously, home your machine, go to 0xy. So to confirm, go to 0xy. We'll do the job coordinates. So you see how this is -71. If we hit this now, these two will move until this goes to 0. Now, I'm glad this has actually happened. You can see here that we have a 4. That's obviously not 0. And the reason why this happens is there is sometimes when you go to 3 or 4 decimal places, a small rounding issue. And so sometimes you can have a 4 here, now, or a 1, or a 2, or a 3. Now, when you have 3 decimal places of a millimeter, for those of you who know how big a millimeter is, and for those of you in the States, a millimeter is 1/25th of an inch. So it's really, really small. So 0.004 is way outside the tolerance of pretty much any CNC router or machine on the planet. There are some that may be able to get close, but realistically, 0.004, you can just treat that as 0. And that is about as accurate as it gets. Now, the reason why we don't do Z here is because you might collide with something. We used to have it move all 3 at the same time, and it can cause collisions. Whereas this way, we get you to raise your Z up. Obviously, it'd be smart for you to raise your Z up as high as you possibly can, and then go to 0xy so that it has the best chance of clearing any obstructions that may be on your bed. Now, the next option along here is set job. So if you click on set job, you can actually dial these in to be pretty much whatever you want. So we could put 20 in here, and we could put 30 in here, and let's just go with -10. Whoops, -10. And A doesn't really matter. Let's just go set job coordinates, and you can see it's done the numbers that we asked for here. And so that's what set job does. Now, 0 job, literally zeroes the job out. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes, we do. And you can see it's actually gone ahead and zeroed all of them out. Now, underneath here, you've got your My Buttons section. Now, My Buttons, I'll just bring this into view, is basically a list of programmable commands and buttons that you can have within Commander to do whatever you need to do for your respective workflow. So all you need to do, so obviously if you left click, it'll execute it. If you right click on it, you can choose what you want it to say. So you can say, let's just go set G28. And the command here would be G28.1. And what that will do is that will set G28.1 to the current machine coordinates. You can obviously choose to adjust the color on here by double clicking on these. So if you want to do this, and we can make it look even prettier right now, we'll go some yellow here. And so you can see it's set the button. So then we can actually set G28, and that will go ahead and essentially execute that command. Now, again, if we choose another button, the reason why there's a drop down here is if you have any macros, and we'll get to this shortly in the macros tab, you can actually get it to execute macros as well. So you can basically have a whole list of them. However many macros you have will appear in this drop down. You can choose to obviously type in any command you'd like in here. Or if you wanted to execute a macro, just choose one from the list and it will execute that macro when you click the button. I'll just cancel out of here though, because we don't know what that macro is going to do right now. But you obviously can choose to do whatever you'd like in these buttons. You can configure them. If you want something complex, make a macro for it. If you want something that's one line, like the setting of the G28, then do that. Now, you will notice new feature in Build 305, drag reorder. So this was something that was requested by a user. Now, it's a little bit hard because we actually need to kind of change the color of these to be able to do this. Let's just do that. Right click here and let's make this blue. Cool. And so what you can do now, if you have this selected here, you can't click on these buttons. They won't actually execute while this is selected, but you can now essentially drag these around. So if you wanted to put these in a particular order, you can. You can literally just drag them around to wherever you want. And this is the easiest way. And then when you're done, untick, and now you can go ahead and actually click on the link and get it to do whatever it's going to do. So that's a new feature that's been added in there. If you want to have one button to do one thing, the one next to it to do the next step, and the one next to do the next step at your leisure, you can do this. Now, this window here will be floating. You can have this window. It will more than likely, if you tick this on top button, what it will do is it will stay on top of other windows, so including Commander. So we can still click on things over here while this window will stay on top. So if you want to, you could say drag it out of view and have it at the top right corner of your screen so you can easily click your buttons. So that's the My Buttons section essentially. Now, the probing button next to it. So if we click on probing, this will take you into the probing wizard within Commander, where you can do a variety of probing routines. So with the Z-axis, you can just do a Z-axis probe. You can do corner probing with an XYZ probe. You can do inner circle probing or inner rectangle probing. You can do outer probing, or which could be for a rectangle or for a circle. You can do angle probing, where it will try to determine the rotation of your stock based on where the zero values are when it touches off the probe. And then you have a list of settings in here, which basically is specific to your machine or to your probes, how far you want to travel. And all of them have these little buttons that will tell you what these values do respectively. So you can go through and have a read of what every single option in here does. Now, if you want to watch a video on it, there is a video tutorial button. You can click on that. We'll launch you into our YouTube channel specific to the probing tutorial video. So that's basically what this does in here. And these are the options that you do have probing-wise. It just makes it very easy rather than you needing to write macros and then customize them later. You can just reference these settings to suit your needs and then execute any one of these probing routines that you like. So let's just close out of there. Now, obviously coolant, flood, and mist. So you can click these buttons and it will trigger the flood and the mist options. So you can see down the bottom here that flood was showing up as triggered just before when you click the flood button. That obviously will happen here. It will toggle the flood on and off for you, for those of you that are using a coolant flood option. Now, in order for you to use coolant mist, you need to have coolant flood selected for you to be able to use coolant mist at the same time. So basically, normally these two would be triggering, but I just can't get the right order of these both together to work. But they will turn on the coolant flood and mist options for you if your controller supports it. Now, let's go into the respective tabs of Commander. Now, I am going to start at the settings. So we're going to skip run job for now, data log, macros, offsets, and we're going to jump into the profiles tab. Now, in the profiles tab of Commander, this is where you can save factory settings of your machine. And you can load default factory profiles onto your controller. So, for example, we have our CNC3D Queen Bee factory settings, CNC3D QB2 settings, etc. And what we've actually done in here is we've tried to do the best settings we can. Now, if you don't have the specific machine for the profile that you're trying to load, do not load the profile on there. There are two separate warnings about this. So if you select one and hit send to machine, are you sure you need to do this? Please read all of the messages that you find in Commander. Many people have just been thinking they're going to get better performance out of their machine by putting one of our profiles on there. You won't, because at the end of the day, it comes down to your controller and the voltage that you run to it as to how fast it will go and how accurate it will be. So the controller will essentially dictate this in the overall build of the machine, not the settings that are on the actual controller or in the profile itself that you want to load. Now, I have added a second note in here to please reconfirm. So definitely do not load profiles on here if you absolutely must, and always read settings within Commander. I think I've pretty much covered everything on there, but just in case, we just had to ask the question again, because a lot of people were locking themselves out of their machine by loading a QB2 profile on there, or a UCarve profile, or a Metal Storm profile, and we actually lock the ability for you to change settings in future, because we pre-configure these machines before we send them out to users, and they are ready to go. There is nothing to change. There is no better numbers that you could possibly have in there. They're very, very accurate from when they leave our factory. So a lot of people are trying to get that performance, but what they end up doing is being unable to change anything else on there. So definitely don't do this unless you have to. Moving forward. So the measurements tab, this is where you can adjust your steps per millimeter per your axes. Now this will support, so Commander itself supports up to 6 axes depending on what you show, but we'll go through the settings options right at the end there, and we'll show you where that actually applies. So for those of you that are kind of setting up a machine for the first time, you can obviously go into the XY motor tune, and there is a wizard in here that you can follow through for setting up your axes. Just read all the data on there. And obviously for the Z, you can do the same thing, where you can specify the distance that you wish to travel. Now, this is different to the new machine wizard, which will pop up the first time you install Commander, but we'll cover that again when we go through the settings section at the end. Now, the axes tab. This is where you specify the direction that your axes will travel, and also specify the acceleration and the max speed for a respective axis. So this basically means that you can choose the max speed, you can choose the acceleration. Obviously, if you were to hit, say, X+, you would expect your X-axis to move to the right. If for some chance it is moving to the left, an easy solution here is just to tick invert X-axis and then update axis direction, and that will have it going the right direction for you. So that is the easiest way for you to correct the direction of your motors, is in the axes tab. Now, moving on, the peripherals tab. So the peripherals tab relates specifically to things like limits and homing. And certain things will be available in here if you have a Nighthawk or an X-Tro V5 and possibly a GRBL HAL controller. But if you have a normal GRBL controller, some of these things will actually be grayed out. For example, these 2 sections here, so homing order and homing access offsets, will basically be grayed out for you. You won't be able to use those. Now, obviously, it's important for you. You can choose here to set your soft limits or your hard limits, and there's information here about doing this. And obviously, your maximum travel limits, which are required for your soft limits to work. So anywhere you see these little question marks, feel free to click on them and learn about things. Now, obviously, if you have dual axis homing, this is where you can specify it in here and choose what axis you actually want to have as the slaved axis on there. And obviously, any changes that you make in here, make sure to hit update peripheral settings to commit all of these changes. Moving forward into the ARCs tab. So this relates specifically to how a GRBL-based controller will process ARCs and the junction deviation. So when you're doing G2 or G3 G-code ARCs, for those of you who aren't sure, it's not overly important, but this is where you can specify it. So for example, people who operate in imperial inches, you will probably want a lower number here than 0.01. because this will end up being in inches. So even though this may say millimeters, it will be in inches if you're in inches mode. You might want to make that 0.001 instead. Again, the arc tolerance in here is set to absolute zeros, which is perfectly fine. Some people might want to put a 2 on the end here or something like that, and then you can update the cornering, and that will change it. But normally you wouldn't change these. Feel free to click on these links and learn more about how it actually works if you need to. Now, moving forward, the Operation tab in Commander. So this is where you can choose things like, for example, being able to put your controller into either spindle or laser mode. So for those of you with a laser, you can, obviously laser mode is much better, especially if you have a Nighthawk controller. The laser mode, the constant velocity engine that I have put into the Nighthawk firmware is very, very good. It essentially reduces the time it takes to produce laser jobs by around 200% over you being in spindle mode, because it doesn't decelerate and accelerate between each distance point. It just travels through at the same speed. So you probably noticed back here in the axes tab, you had acceleration. Whenever when you ask something to move, it will ramp up its speed and go across, and then decelerate and ramp down. When you are in laser mode and traveling in a straight line, it won't stop for all of those 0.1 or 0.2 mil increments, whatever resolution you've set your laser to. It'll just keep powering through and adjust its power dynamically as it goes. Now, on the right side, you've got your minimum and maximum speed / power. So this is basically the settings for your spindle. So in the case of spindle operation, usually would set this as max RPM, and the minimum would usually be 0. Have a play with this depending on what you're doing. You can also choose your machine units between metric or imperial. So if we do this, you will see that now everything comes in 4 decimal places as opposed to 3. But we're just going to leave this back in metric now. And for the signal processing, again, this is a direct GRBL related thing here. Step pulse of 3 and step odd delay of 250. There are some exotic drivers out there that we've seen, hybrid servo stepo drives. You may need to adjust this step pulse to 1. Anywhere between 1 and 10 is usually pretty good. A lot of controllers default to 10. And again, if you want to change things, just hit update operation settings, you're good to go. Now, the connection / ESP32 tab. So basically, this is where you can do things like if you have a Nighthawk or you have an X-Pro V5, you can easily set some of your settings. So obviously, the first tab across the top here is the connections tab. You will note as well, too, there is the connection status of your network. It will tell you what you're connected to. And so in here, this is where you can choose between connecting to existing network or doing direct access. Now, if you have a normal GRBL-based controller, these will all be grayed out. You won't be able to access any of these menus because we know they don't relate to it. So feel free to go through any of these tabs and have a play. If you have a Nighthawk, you probably already have if you've set it up or seen our video on setting up your Nighthawk, which there is a handy link for right here, which is video tutorial. So you can click on that. That will launch a YouTube link and tell you all about this menu. Now, the ATC settings are currently disabled. This is for our Nighthawk Pro controller that we have been working on for a while and will probably come out hopefully in 2025, but possibly 2026, depending on how the market goes with the launch of our THC controller. But you will be able to easily configure things in here when the time comes. Now, current / micro stepping. So this particular menu in here relates to the X-Pro V5 and not to a Nighthawk, where the drives are actually set manually. So you need to actually adjust trim pots to set the current. This is for things like an X-Pro V5, where you can choose your micro stepping, your motor run current, your stall guard. You can easily configure your motors in here. Definitely use this over trying to figure out the $ values. If you've got an X-Pro V5, just use Commander. It's just going to be a better option for you. And I've worked very hard on making it the best possible tool for this. So that pretty much covers all of the tabs across here. Now, let's jump straight into the, let's go to the offsets tab first. Now, this is a list of offsets from your machine. Now, there is a refresh option here. I'll just hit that, and you can see one of the numbers here already changed. So any of the values here that are black are all going to be zeros, and any other values in here that are not 0 will appear in red. Now, you can choose to dial all of these values in here. Once you do select all the values or whatever you want to do, you can hit Update General Offsets, and it will go through and set all of them for you. Now, you can choose to put an offset note in here. This was something that was requested by another user. They use their different offsets for different things, and they just keep them labeled in here so they know what they're using them for. So feel free to put any note. This doesn't actually relate to your controller. This specifically relates to Commander itself. So it's part of the local install of Commander. Now, you can obviously set your G28 position here to where you are currently, and your G30, which is basically the same as G28. It's a fixed point, which is always stored into persistent memory. So even if you turn the controller off and back on, it will know what that machine coordinate position is. So that's essentially the Offsets tab. Feel free to have a play in here if you need to. Now, the Macros tab. So for those of you that don't know, I have created my own programming language, which I didn't know what to call, but I've just called it DaveScript. And if you want to know how to use it, there is this button here, Scripting Help. This will launch the DaveScript manual in here. which has all the documentation for how DaveScript actually works. No. And so you can go through and view the code references here. There is actual examples of what to do, how to create variables, how to do things like if statements, how to make message boxes and prompts appear so you can enter in values, how to do mathematical calculations. So you can do all this stuff in here and assign it to a variable. And if you want to, literally, you can copy paste this here as an example and get it to give you an output so you can actually see what the output is. Moving on from there, so have a read through that and do obviously whatever you need to do for the actual script itself. Now, the script itself is actually quite powerful. So if we go into new, there is a full editor in here that I have created. So if we want to, we could make a variable in here. I don't know, we can call it moo, and it equals 15. We can do things like basically you've got line numbers, you've got code highlighting in here. You can check all of your variables and whether or not they were declared. You can click on a line and hit toggle comment, and it will basically comment or uncomment that line depending on what it is. You have a couple of settings in here for line numbers and code highlighting. Basically, have a read through the documentation. You can make very advanced types of scripts in here. If I was to say, for example, do a find in here, it will actually show you all results that are found down the bottom here in this tabbed menu to make it nice and easy for you to do what you got to do. And if you double click on anything that's selected, it will highlight the respective line for you. So it's very easy for you to be able to do that. So have fun with that. Have a bit of a play in there. If you want to create some really advanced scripts and stuff like that, you obviously have the ability to rename your macros, to delete them, import new ones, or export them. If you do want to back them up somewhere, just in case something ever happens to this computer, you can pretty much load all of your macros back in here just by choosing to import ones that you have exported. So that's pretty much how that works. Now, what we'll do is we'll jump into the data log tab. Now, this tab is basically a simplified version of the raw data window that's found in the help menu here. And it won't show you all commands, like, for example, job commands and stuff like that, but it will show you anything that's kind of G-code related will appear in here. So a whole bunch of other stuff won't appear in here. We have decided to keep this simple. It's really just here for troubleshooting purposes. Now, let's jump into the Run Job menu. Now, the Run Job menu, this is where you're probably going to be spending most of your time when you're operating the machine. Now, we obviously have a few different options here. So obviously, you can choose option 1, which is load a G-code file. This has actually been disabled now on Wi-Fi. We probably won't even be able to do this. We're going to pick a job on here. So say, for example, 6-check test with tools. We'll load that up in here. And you'll notice now that we have it loaded, we have a couple of options. You can either hit run job. That's how you would actually start a job. And you have these two other options. So if you click on view job, it will take you into the visualizer here, and you can basically go through and, choose to view what the actual job is doing. This is obviously just a very, very simple circle job that we've created. We didn't even let it finish. We just took it straight back to 0. And so obviously you've got a couple of choices. Now, to make things easier, there's a lot of handy tools for this, and they apply to both this top section and the bottom one. So if you go to setup/info, this particular job's had a bunch of tools in it. So you can see T1, T2, T3. In order for this information to be extracted from the job, you do need to make sure you are using one of our CNC3D post processors, which could be for Carveco, Vectric, or for Fusion 360 or Inventor. And that will structure all of your tool info in a way that we can actually take it out of the job and tell you exactly what it's going to be. Now, this obviously also gives you the job dimensions, so you can see all of the dimensions. This is as accurate as I could possibly make it in order for it to give you the right information. I think I've covered all bases, but it may not always be perfect. Furthermore, you'll notice here it says 1 potential issue, 1 observation. If you click on that, this is a list of things. So after analyzing the job, I've tried to give users as much information as possible about what could be wrong with their job. Now, there are certain things that I need in order to be able to do that. So for example, soft limits are not enabled to determine. So we know how far the machine can travel based on what you had. So let's close out of here. Based on what you had in here in your travel limits. But you can see we don't have soft limits enabled, which means it's probably not going to trigger an alarm too because you don't have soft limits enabled. So what we'll do is if you look in here and you see this, so this is part of the reason why we can't. So potential issue, Z-axis is 5 mil higher than your topmost Z travel. Well, yes, it is, because right now, if you have a look, we're at 0, which means we're at the highest possible point of Z. And if we look in here, we can see that we had job save Z is 5 mil. So save Z means from the 0 position, how much further up does the Z actually travel? And so in this case, it's 5 mil. Now, you may have jobs which reference your bed, and this in here, there is a note that will actually tell you that as well, because nothing will ever go lower than the actual Z axis. So if we actually look here, you can see the total height is 6 mil, so it's 1 mil deep, and it's 5 mil above the Z0, so heading upwards. So this is a handy little tool. This visualization here will tell you roughly where it is. If we look at the Z, you can see this reflects your maximum travel of Z, which unfortunately right now is set to 2,000 millimeters, but that's okay. That's what it's set to. But this will actually tell you if you're going to go out of bounds of your travel area. So you can choose to go between these. You can see where the home position is, and you can see where the current start position is there. And this will usually tell you how big your job's going to be. So this is a handy feature for this. Now, if you just want to view G-code, you can do that as well. And it will bring up the menu in here, so you can actually go through and see these values in here. And if you need to, say, for example, it's very often people say, oh, my job's not doing something correctly. We'll say, give us the first 20 lines. You can select these 20 lines and paste them into the support post that you're making in order to get help. So that's where you can choose to view your G-code. Now, down the bottom here, there is a video tutorial button that will go into way more detail about this section here. But there's a lot of very cool stuff in here. Now you have setup and prepare job. So there's a few different options here. So obviously start from line. So you can choose to start from line. So this is where you can specify certain values in here. So you can click on this and it will tell you. So your controller may not support this. So you basically need a Nighthawk controller in order for you to be able to do this. If you have any other type of controller, this will not work. So this is an exclusive feature to the Nighthawk that we have added. It is not a premium feature that you can buy in Commander. Commander is completely free for everyone to use anywhere in the world for any type, commercial or personal use CNC. It doesn't matter. But basically, if you want to be able to use this function on the SD card, you will need a Nighthawk. This particular function will work when you are streaming. So for the top option that we have selected up here in this option 1 where it's got run job, you can actually do this. So you can go in here, you can choose whatever line you want to start at. You can choose to add an M3 or a dwell after any M3 or M4 is fired. These are basically just handy little functions that we've added in. Obviously, it only applies to when you're in spindle mode, not in laser mode. And then you can choose either to run the job as normal, which is just going to stream the whole job out, or you can choose to step through the job line by line, which was a handy feature. So we're going to choose this option so you can actually see it. Because what you would expect if you chose this option is to go update. It's going to take you here. You can see starting at line 80. We could hit run job. Now, I know this job literally takes about 2 seconds to complete. So, okay, well, we're on an IP connection, so it won't work anyway. I have actually locked this out, unfortunately, because it was just causing too many issues. But normally what you'll do is you could actually choose to step through this job if you wanted to. We'll do that in a second down here. So that takes us to the next section. Now, if you have a Nighthawk or an X-Pro V5, this option 2 section will come alive, and there's a lot of cool features in here for you. So first of all, you'll notice there's a folder view button at the top. Now, this only works with a Nighthawk. This will not work with an X-Pro V5 because it does not give me enough data to be able to know if folders are empty for me to be able to do it. But if you have a Nighthawk, then absolutely you can. So if you go to file view, we can see the jobs are on there. If you go to folder view, it's basically a tree view. Now, at the moment, we don't have any folders in here. If we want to, we can click on new folder. We'll call this test. And then basically that's now created a new folder. If you click on that folder and hit upload job, we can then now choose to put a job in here. As you can see, that's much quicker on the 2.4 firmware. And so you can actually organize all of your jobs very easily now by choosing to use this view. Now, keep in mind, this only works with a Nighthawk right now. If it will show you other folders on here if you have an X Pro V5, but you must have at least a file in there for it to show us the folder, to show Commander the folder. Otherwise, it does not send empty folders. There's actually no way to pull this information out of an X Pro V5, and it will need a firmware update at some point whenever that development team chooses to do that or not. So exclusive to Nighthawk pretty much for you to be able to have easy control. Now, obviously, all of your jobs are loaded in here. So if we click on 6-shape test with tools, again, you have the same buttons that you had at the top here. You've got your setup info, you've got your view SD job. So you can do this. And this all ties in with the job sync function that you would have seen early at the start of this video when it first popped up. So if we go in and obviously view, we've just done that. We'll go into setup info. Again, it's got our tool information in here. You can choose to view your G code. You can prepare an outline trace. That's actually another feature we didn't cover before. So if you were trying to see whether or not you can fit your job within a particular area, you can choose to do an outline trace. And so we've selected that option there. It knows how large the job is based on the information that it had in here. So we know how big it is. We know what the current position of, like if it's a G90 job, we know how big it is. And we'll actually do a rectangle for you to the maximum extent of what we know the job to be. So very easy process for you anyway to do there. Now, if you want to clear this on here, so say for example, you've got something loaded, obviously this button's ready to go to trace now. If you don't want to do that again, you can just go into setup info and cancel outline trace, and that will take you back into here. And that's the easiest way. We'll just hit refresh here, and you see that it has brought the list back for you, so you can just go and select these things again. Now, if we go into setup/info and we go into setup and prepare this job, this is also another feature that is exclusive to a Nighthawk, is you can choose to dial this in. So say you want to start from line 20, you can hit update in there. And then basically you can choose to hit the run SD job button. Now, because we've asked it to start from a specific line, this window will now appear where it will ask you specific info. This is the info we have found, anything that we haven't found. If you've got too much missing from here based on the line you've asked to start from, it's probably not a good idea for you to run this job. In this case, we have a lot of info. The only thing that's missing is A, B, and C axes. We know this is a 3-axis job. So say this was fine and good to go. You can just hit run job now, and it will run from line 20 that it has loaded there. And you should basically be good to go. So that's one of the new features that's also been loaded into CNC3D Commander. And also, it was actually pushed in the last release, and the 2.3 firmware supports the ability for SD jobs to start from a specific line. So it should make things a lot easier for you. Again, if you just want to hit refresh, yes, we'll refresh. It'll take our list back here. Then we can click on jobs. We'll go, what else is in here that we can go through? Setup/info. So just start from specific line is all you can actually do, is the only option that you have. Now, this particular job here, I believe, has tools in it. 6-shape test with tools. Let's just go in here. Yep, it's found our tools. So this is one of the new features that's been pushed out in 2.4, and we did a separate video on this as well. So you can choose a job that has tools, hit run SD job. Obviously, it's found some potential issues. It's perfectly fine. These are just indicative. If you see these here, it doesn't mean it's 100% correct. It just may or may not be accurate. So obviously, you don't have soft limits. Well, that's going to be an issue. So just hit run job anyway. Now, the very first line of G code in this job, other than the tool information, was the first tool, which we know was a 6mm 2-flute straight cut based on the notes that were left in here. Now, you can choose to do two things. You can choose to run a macro right now or do a manual tool change. It's up to you. This being the first tool, we're going to assume you already have the right tool in there to start with. But just in case you don't, you could choose manual tool change, hit change tool, and then now you can do basically whatever you'd like. You can jog X and Y around, and then basically you can raise, so say for example, raise your Z. I mean, it's already at 0, but if you wanted to, you could technically raise it higher, put your new tool in there, and when you're ready, you hit resume SD job. Now, it'll bring up here your axes, so X, Y, Z, A, because it knows that's how many you have. And basically, you can choose to move to the last known machine coordinate position or the selected axis machine 0 position. So, for example, at the moment, the Y machine coordinate is 22.1. So if we were to leave that here and hit execute, well, it's not going to do anything because it's already at 22.116 because that is the last known machine coordinate. If we were to go to 0 here and hit execute, you would see the Y-axis is now moving to the machine 0, which theoretically is the absolute far left-hand side of the machine or I should say, the absolute front part of the machine that the machine can travel to. Again, with the X-axis, if you click on X here and go to the 0 position, you'll see that it is traveling there at 1,000 millimeters per minute. And basically that now is the far left-hand side of the machine. Now, obviously, these have just been added in here to be very handy for you to do what you're doing. There is this Learn More button in here, which basically explains a lot of this to you. Feel free to read any of these that you see. And let's say that we're happy to go now. We can just hit Resume Job. Are you happy with this tool change? Yes. And then now what it will do is it will go back and start running the job again. And then we've now hit another tool change. Again, you've got a couple of options. You can choose to either run a predefined macro that you've specified that you want to do for tool changing. Alternatively, you can just choose to do a manual tool change, or in this particular case, we're just going to ignore and continue. And there's another tool change. We'll just do the same thing there. And then eventually your job should actually complete. And there it is. So that's perfectly fine. That's now done. And that basically covers the features of running jobs on your machine and how to actually do them and how to use Commander and the Nighthawk. Now, obviously, if you have an X-Pro V5, your ability to run jobs out of here is just enormously excellent compared to other things. You can see that new one we've made in there. It's got its own folder in there now. You can actually see the path because there is a file in that folder. So normally this will only show files in this section. It won't show any folders, but it will show you the path to get to a file. With the folder view, it will show you both. So you can actually see the folders and you can also see the jobs as well. Now, moving on, the immediate overrides. So this is obviously your ability to increase your feed rate and to increase your laser or your spindle speed or power. You can go all the way up to 200%. And you can go all the way down to 10% for both of these. So this will slow things up or speed things up, and that's as far as you can possibly go. You can obviously hit reset, and that will reset both of these. You have your laser or your spindle control, so it has your on-off commands, and of course your speed or your power value, and you can choose on or you can choose off, and it will turn those on and off. If you have a look here, you have this readout here under S, which will tell you what it's doing. So if we go on, you can see it's going clockwise. If we go off, if we change this to M4, you can see it now says counterclockwise, which normally happens in spindle mode. In laser mode, though, it's a little bit different, but you can look up GRBL laser stuff yourself. And that's basically how you can test things. Now, manual command box is exactly that. Any command that you type in here, you can hit send, and it will send it through to the controller. So if you wanted to go, say, G38.2, Z40, and hit send, it will attempt to, it will send this straight through to your controller. So this is where you can type in essentially any command that you would like. So let's jump into the settings here and take a look at them now. So first thing we have to do to access settings is disconnect. Now, when we go into settings, you obviously have a bunch of tabs here on the side to choose what it is that you want to do. So in general, you got your double buffer catalog. So that is for this data log in the background here. That there will basically be smoother when it's running through jobs, but only when you're streaming will it really make any difference. So disable automatic access checking. If we look here, this here will mean that it will automatically detect how many axes your controller has and show you the respective axes on the side here. Now, Commander actually supports up to 6. So if we choose 6 here and we hit update, you can see that a lot of things have changed here now. We're basically forcing it to show all 6. You got a lot more jogging buttons. If we go back through these, you can see now B and C and A have appeared in here. Again, this goes all the way through to here. All your options here have now changed as well. That's pretty much all of them in there. Oh, there you go. There's your extra ones in here for your motor current as well too. So that's if you want to show how many axes you can do. So if your GRBL-based controller has 6 axes, you can use Commander in order to be able to control it, drag it around, and do whatever you need to do. So going back into the settings, obviously maintenance period, this only relates to CNC3D stuff. You can check all of this. The job issue checking and warnings, that's the tool that we saw earlier that was telling us that our soft limits were not enabled. So a very handy feature for you to keep on there and will be on by default. The communications tab has some handy features in here when you're doing things. Definitely go through and have a play with some of these settings. Probably the only ones. So My Buttons, obviously you can choose to import and export your current My Buttons that you have saved. If for some reason you click on the My Buttons window and you cannot see the window, it's just completely disappeared, just hit Recover Window and that will put it up to be in the center of this window or at the top left of your screen. Keyboard option. These are all programmable buttons for your keyboard. Now you have 2 options here. You can either be in simple mode or you can be in advanced mode. And if you choose, you need to tell it what you want to do. So simple key mode is very simple. It's just whatever you program these buttons to do. So X plus, X minus, and what key you want to press. Advanced, you do full-on key binding. You specify what function. You can either type things in here. So you can go X10. You can go like G0, X10. And then it will say, okay, so then you want to double click here to listen for a key. I'll press the B key and you can see it's loaded B in there. Or I can press it in here and I can choose, what's something? I can go tab and do whatever, and that will execute this. So that's basically what you do to do this, and you can fully program every single key on your keyboard to a particular function or a macro or a pre-made option in here, like your feed and speed overrides, the ability to connect and disconnect from your controller, all of these things. Toggle pendant feed control, so you can actually adjust your pendant feed control. So this advanced option was added into this release of Commander. We always had this simple one, but somebody requested this, so we have gone ahead and done that now. Now, obviously, you've got your absolute keyboard jogging. This is all timer-based in order to prevent controllers from crashing, because if you hold a key down on your keyboard, you can crash your controller. It is possible to do, and it will reset, and it will lose its position because you've just hammered it with way too much data. So leaving this here value of 100 milliseconds is probably okay. Some of you, if you're on Wi-Fi, may want to do 200 is the best option. Now, obviously, gamepad control, you can configure all your gamepad buttons and exactly what you want to do here. So this relates to, so if you had a gamepad connected, like an Xbox 360 controller, you could hold down a button and it will tell you right here what that button is that you're pressing. And then you can choose to assign it to any one of these keys. Again, gamepad jogging, timer interval, your base feed rate, and then whether or not, so if you hold left trigger or right trigger is fast or slow, it will double or halve. And then you can choose to invert your axis too if you want to go the other way around. So shuttle pendant, again, this is for a Shuttle Pro or any of the shuttles. If you look them up, they're basically like a little hand control mouse thing, like an advanced mouse. You need to specify what type you have. So a Pro 2, or an Express, and whether it's primary or secondary. And the help button here will give you this info here. There's a couple of typos. Sorry about that, guys. I just kind of write things as quick as I can to sort of help you guys out. So, and then you can literally press buttons and assign them. So you can, so I just double clicked on there and that brought up this menu. So double click and you can choose what function you want it to perform. Again, you can specify all these values in here and tell it exactly what you want it to do. What do we got? The WHB04B pendant, probably one of the best pendants you can get. We do stock these. You can choose to purchase one here. We'll take you to our website. They are a full featured pendant. You can obviously assign all of the macro buttons on there to whatever you want. The other pre-labeled buttons are exactly as they're labeled. So static labeled buttons or macros. So this is the default value. So static labeled buttons or the macros option for which is the default. This kind of box here explains it to you. And then enable feed rate change via pendant. So whether or not you want to allow the pendant to change feed rates on you by putting the knob into a different spot or not. This was actually requested by someone else and has been put in there. So, and then of course sounds. So enable sounds. The only thing that currently has a sound is when it's probing, and this was requested by a user. Then basically it will play a sound when the probe has reached its target. You can browse for this. It can be basically it has to be a WAV file. I haven't added MP3 support, unfortunately. So it's pretty much just going to be the default sound, which is a little bing sound. And that's basically it. I think if we, no, it doesn't make any noise. I think I've turned the sound down on here. Of course, any changes that you make in here, no matter which one of these tabs you are on, you have to hit the update button to commit those changes. So we're going to hit update and go through. Look, guys, it's been 57 minutes of this video already from when I've been recording, and there's literally no edits to this. So, look, this is going to be a long video. I really hope this has been informative to you. Many of you have requested, I guess, a basic rundown of Commander. We have now gone through and done all of that. I mean, we could go through the creation tools here. So let's just quickly do that. Obviously, in creation tools, this is where you can make jobs, right? Certain types of jobs. So machine tools, so spoil board, surfacing wizard. This was added in here. You can choose to create a job just to flatten your surface of your spoil board, or just make rectangles to whatever size you would like. And there's obviously a whole bunch of patterns on there and options that you can choose in here. Have a read through. Very simple. Laser image engraver. So this is a image engraver. So if we go open, we'll choose old Snorlax in here. We can obviously preview and see how he's going to look. And you can see that anything in green is where we're going to apply the color, and anything in red is where we're not. Now, this particular job had a few artifacts in it. That's why we can see it's over-traveled a bit. It's not the best PNG that we've ever made. But this will make things really, really easy for you guys if you just want to make a quick job using your laser. There is a separate tutorial button up here. You can watch the video on using that. And then again, CNC3D. This is our full CNC3D creation suite. I'll just bring this into view. And this is a vector design tool, which it won't actually let me make the window any smaller than it is now. Let's do that. So you can choose jobs for laser, plasma, or pen and knife. Look, it is an alpha project at present. It works okay. It's not the best. I am working at this at the moment. It will be improved in the next release. It hasn't changed very much at all in this current release of Commander. But in the next release, it's going to be much, much better. And I already have added a lot of very cool stuff in there. There is, again, if you go into help, I'll bring this into view. You have the video tutorial button. I highly recommend watching this, and it will give you a good idea of what you're actually doing. So look, that pretty much covers everything, guys. I really hope this has been informative. And yeah, I hope you enjoy using CNC3D Commander. Keep giving me your feedback, and I will continue to improve it any way that I can. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.